welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the sign of Scorpio, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for Gemini season or June 2026. I mean, whatever floats your boat at this point, right? I'm here for it. So I hope you're well. I'm using the Bulgarian deck for you today, the 777. So things to tell you before we begin. If the reading resonates with you and you would like to go a little bit deeper, there will be an extended that you can access at the end. Links for that are in the description box below. The link that takes you to Self-Eye will take you to the individual reading for extended for this sign. But if you want access to more of the extended content that I make, which includes, not only the extendeds for all of the signs every month, but also weekly energy readings and the opportunity to participate in the Deccan walk that we're doing over in my private community, then you might think about coming to join that. It's the Order of the Phoenix on the Circle platform. And if you join at the higher level, you can come participate in the live classes that we run over there every month and get access to all of the recordings for all of the classes that we've done up until this point, which is a considerable number. Anyway, with all of that said, let's flip the camera around and see what we're doing right here, right now. So we're going to start off with the most important question that you can ask yourself in 2026, which is simply, where am I right now? Nothing else really. It is important because you need to be able to situate yourself in time and space to work out the answer to the second question, which we will get to in a minute. But the point is not to think about things that we're afraid might be happening, not to find ways to worry about, like, where are we? Just that's it. And then from there, inspired actually somewhat by the Deccan walk and the Gemini Decans that we're in right now, we need to have a look at our thinking and what part of that is ripe for overhaul, right? Whether that's our worldview, our belief systems, belief structures. Something's changing during this time. It's an upgrade to the thinking. So we'll try and sort of locate where that is for you, Scorpio. And then the second most important question that you can ask yourself is simply, what is the next step? That's it. We don't need to think about what we're doing in 5 years' time. We don't need to think about where we want to be this time next year. Like, what is simply the next step for you? So I hope that that's okay for you. In the extended, we will dig deeper into whatever comes out here. But let's get started with, where is Scorpio right now, please? Whoa. So we have the Queen of Swords on her side. We have the Three of Swords and the Queen of Pentacles on her side also. And let's get one more card for Scorpio, please. Oh, that's not one. Behave. Right. The High Priestess is at the bottom of the deck there. For me, she represents the sign of Pisces. And she's very much about the things that we know without really knowing why we know them, right? In amongst other things, she can also talk about intuition. She can talk about a state of grace and acceptance. But she does also represent the liminal. And there's something of an in-between stage that we can certainly see here, because we've got this Knight of Pentacles and the Five of Cups, a Scorpio card, and the King of Swords, and obviously these two are on their side as well. Now, if that's not a representation of a somewhat liminal state, I don't know what is. But the point that I'm trying to get to here is the only thing that's really upright and active, as per the cards that are on the table right here, is Virgo energy of the Knight of Pentacles. And this is really quite interesting, because in this round of readings, I have noticed that we've had a significant resurgence of the energies of the nodes. And I can't speak to astrologically why that would be, except that I do know that Uranus will be squaring them at some point in the not too distant future. And the interesting thing about, the influence of Uranus on the nodes is that we've got a kind of, a sudden injection of energy, upheaval, breakthrough quite often. But I've noticed that certainly, and it seems specifically more the South node that seems to be pumping out all the energy at the moment. We've got a resurgence of South node themes, and wherever there are South node themes, we know that there is a balancing going on. And as per the whole tone of this reading, some sort of upgrade that is happening, because we're leaving something behind, but we're choosing what we need to keep, and we're trying to move forward from that place whilst going with the Pisces energy of acceptance and flow state and that sort of thing, right? So the reason why this is a bit odd is because when the nodes first enter the sign, you get a big kick of that energy there, and you really notice it. The whole process takes about 18 months for the nodes to move through their respective signs before they move into the next one. So around about the 9-month mark, we have kind of peak experience of South Node or North Node lessons, and then it tends to die down a little bit after that, because we're very much in the integration phase then, right? We've kind of seen the point of it, and then we're doing the thing. Not so this time. And so with, a scant, it's not even, I don't know, about 2 months before the nodes switch signs, suddenly they fired back up again, and it's really cranked up the need for engagement with these nodal themes of both Pisces and Virgo right here. And then we have every single one of the other cards showing up sideways, which I think is an indication of where the maybe instability, I might go with instability, is showing up. Now you'll notice that we have both the King and the Queen of Swords, which I actually really like for you, because it's leading in very nicely to the second stage of cards, which is where is the thinking needing to change. Not just the decisions that we make and the way that we make the decisions, but what is the information that we are working to that will facilitate the decision-making process of the King. But we also have the Queen of Pentacles on her side as well. And so there's a big question here of not only what we think and what decisions we're making, and how that seems to be, it seems to have been knocked into somewhat of a suspended state for now while we're trying to work things through. But also what it is that we actually value. And I think it's really fascinating that the Queen of Pentacles and the Three of Swords should have shown up simultaneously, when both of them, in their own way, speak about some aspect of something that we value. Why do I say that? Well, the Queen of Pentacles here is all, obviously, about the internal subjective experience of the Pentacles and what they represent, which is value, right? And if we find something to be valuable, then we invest in it. And it's not just about money. It's about your time, your care, your effort, your love, your attention. And that's a big one in 2026. And she's doing all the prior working out, right, the internal subjective stuff, before handing this over to the King to actually action it. That's the balance of masculine and feminine energies at play there. So we've got this inbuilt notion of value right here with the Queen of Pentacles. But even in the Three of Swords, we see the same thing. Because that heart in the middle, it represents what we are emotionally invested in. Now, usually when the Three of Swords it comes up, it's an emotional investment in a paradigm that changes when new information or facts or whatever it is, a new perspective, comes in and punctures, effectively, the balloon of what we were emotionally invested in. I think it's fascinating how this is all speaking to some extent, belief systems and belief structures, the structural integrity of our life as it relates to what we think is important. And we've got two cards here that feel to me like you're already kind of pressing on that a little bit. It's like some aspect of your paradigm isn't really standing up to scrutiny somehow. And I'm not sure that you're quite aware where that is yet. But the fact that the Five of Cups is here feels really significant. The fact that it's on its side also feels really significant, because the fives are very chaotic energy, right? All of the fives in the minor arcana are chaotic. They represent instability and upheaval, and some of that Uranian stuff that we were talking about, although it's not a card that corresponds to Uranus. The Five of Cups generally indicates emotions that are stuck, that do not flow. And they're supposed to. That's the whole point. The cups represent the water, which is actually where the elemental power of this, where water is. Right? It's not in the cups. The cups are just the vessels that hold it. But there's this idea about stuck emotions starting to come up to the surface, right? Just in time. this resurgence of the South Node energy, for us to kind of look at them and go, what do we need to carry moving forwards? Because I don't think any of this is useful. Now, I've talked about the nodes quite a lot, and I think one of the reasons why this is proving to be so important right now for you, specifically Scorpio, is that from July, we're going to have a massive Leo clusterfuck of stuff going on. And I think it's because the nodes are going to be squaring everything that you have in Scorpio from July onwards, that it's time to sort of clear the decks to some extent, to make sure that you are ready for whatever friction that might bring. Because the South Node's going to move from Virgo into Leo. Jupiter is going to move into Leo. What else is happening in Leo? Other things. Oh, we're going to have eclipses in Leo. And we've also got Pluto opposing everything in Leo on the other side of the chart. And so what is it doing? It's squaring everything that you have in Scorpio, at least by house, if not by exact degree. And I think there's quite a lot of tension in all of that, which we could look at and go, well, that's just awful. I'm just going to, going to dig a hole and put myself in it for the next 18 months and not come out. But squares are good because squares create change, right? And particularly in places where we haven't really wanted to change too much. It's like that friction and that tension forces some kind of change, which is ultimately better for us than trying to stick in the rigid place that we are. So we've got two cards that speak about emotions that are shifting and changing for some reason. We've got questioning on what you think and the value of the decisions that you are making, the quality maybe of the decisions that you're making right now. And we've got this big energy of we're balancing all of this out now. I mean, the best situation to have the Five of Cups in, to be honest, is reversed like that, because we've got a stabilization of the energies then. We're not quite there, but we're certainly much closer than we were perhaps a few months ago. And the High Priestess sitting at the bottom there is making me wonder if you're actually not losing yourself in this in a way that you might have in the past. It feels more like you're bearing silent witness to these things that you can see are shifting and changing, the things that you can feel are shifting and changing. Because this Three of Swords, although it's one of those cards that people consider to be negative, and I've got a whole class on that. It's actually, I've got it down in the webinar section in the description box below. It represents a planet in exaltation. It is Saturn and Libra. It's like Saturn can do his best work here. And it's not doing his best work because he's kicking the shit out of us. He's doing his best work because he's presenting a level of reality that we haven't worked to up until this point. And I think that a previous version of you might have run away from the idea that there was something quite painful about everything that is happening here. But the High Priestess at the bottom of the deck makes me feel like you're actually sitting with it and you're allowing it to happen. It's like the fear of the pain, grief, loss, all those kind of really sticky Five of Cups emotions are not stopping you from doing the very necessary work of allowing the change. Which is to say then, although all these cards are showing up sideways and this doesn't feel very comfortable, you've really dug in to allowing yourself to sit in the liminal space. I feel like you observing it without judgment, a little bit of, kind of eyebrowing it a little bit of suspicion, but knowing that ultimately, because everything has to change this year, it stands to reason that all of these things would change too. And particularly when it comes to things like the way your conscious mind works, so much of that is underpinned by your emotional responses to things, that we have to see energy moving in both of these places. I mean, initially emotional first, and then we can start to change our mind about stuff, right? But because we've got this question of value, what is valuable for you to invest in, what is valuable in terms of investing in yourself, have you been investing in yourself or have you not? the quality of your attention, the value of your attention, like these things are all up for renegotiation. It feels like you're not exactly rewriting a narrative, but you're allowing a narrative to be rewritten by the universe, and you're watching it to see where it goes, which is quite a Scorpio thing to do, I think, in all other respects other than your own emotional state. So this represents a big step up in the way that you're doing things anyway. See what I mean, Scorpio? Let's have a look and see what part of the paradigm is shifting for you, where your thinking's getting an upgrade. Well, so there's the first one. We've got the Three of Wands. Oh, I like that. We've got the oh, Scorpio. Goodness. We've got another Pisces card of the Hanged Man. And we've got the Page of Wands as well. And I see all the fire suddenly appears here. We've got the Three of Wands, Page of Wands, and we've got the Sun at the bottom of the deck. Let's put it over there. Now, the Sun is the light of consciousness. I mean, the Sun is many other things besides, and it's certainly a kind of innocent happiness that one might not necessarily always associate with the sign of Scorpio, right? Why? Because the wounding started early and it started hard and probably hasn't let up, actually, for decades. And so, you know, as a survival mechanism, trapping those emotions, pushing them down deep and then not letting them out again was very, very powerful. It's what has allowed you to function for the longest time. But now there's a shift in consciousness happening, and it is insufficient as a survival mechanism for any of us to repress what actually should be actually just released and allowed to move through. Like, we know that there's probably going to be something a little bit sharp about that, but it's like you're turning the light of consciousness to these really essential questions, like, do I believe that it is, and I mean truly, I don't mean just as a passing thought while I'm doing the washing up, am I allowed to be happy? But I mean fundamentally, deep down, am I allowed to be happy? Am I allowed to pursue the things that I like, that I love, that am I allowed to emotionally invest? And really sit with the immediate answer that comes back. Now, it could be for you that it's a little voice that chunters along in the background, you know, the inner critic, which has always got something to say about what you're doing. And maybe even the end. I had a period of time, and it was probably for about 2 years, where I had one specific voice that used to speak to me that I called my doom voice. And it wasn't mean or anything like that, but it would just come and forecast some doom, and I'd be like, oh, okay. I mean, it was invariably right, which is a bit sad to admit. But I never really had a corresponding joy voice. Now, whether these were expressions of a kind of negativity oracle that I had inside of me, or whether it was something else, or just patterns and scripts that keep running in my head, you know. The point is, we're looking at these things now. And I think, Scorpio, it's just really interesting. My whole rib cage feels like it's tightening ever so slightly while I'm talking about these questions with you. Because we got the Three of Wands here, and you will notice that we've got this Sun up here. It is very, very close to this Sun. And we've got a kind of orientation that is happening, right? Here's a direction that we want to move in. Here are the ways in which we wish to change the experience that we have. Which is to say, not just the things that we do day to day, but the kind of deeper meanings behind why we do the things, as well as allowing ourselves to do the things full stop. But then we've got the Nine of Cups there that's also talking about, you know, the emotional investment, the emotional regulation, the ability, perhaps, to sit and ponder these big questions without the corresponding rib cage tightening up that I can feel when I'm talking to you. Now, it may represent itself in your body differently, but that's what's going on here. I can feel it compressing my fucking organs. Because this Hanged Man says, at the very least, it's time to start considering things from a different position. But it's double Pisces that you've got on the table here, and it's that North Node pull towards something, which is that is going to require you to surrender to something that is going to feel a little uncomfortable while you do it. Why? Because it's challenging the survival mechanism that has got you this far. And it's asking whether it's still required, whether it's still necessary. You remember I said that, the emotional stuff was the foundation, and the thinking is kind of layered on top of that. I want to say this because the conscious mind, works pretty well, does all the things, but by no means does it do all the heavy lifting when it comes to processing anything at all. You've actually got this mammoth type thing in your subconscious that is really doing the heavy lifting, and it never sleeps, and it's always scanning for problems and all that sort of stuff. And that mammoth of your subconscious is in continual contact with your nervous system. So when I ask you the question, are you allowed to be happy, Scorpio? Whatever your conscious mind says, and however quickly your conscious mind says it, at least 4 times faster, your subconscious has already answered the question, and it's had some sort of corresponding connection to your nervous system, and you may well feel it in your body right now. The subconscious works on average 4 times faster than your conscious mind. In some instances, it can work up to 10 times faster. What's the point of this? You've already made the decision before you've registered that you've had a thought. That's what this is. And that's all coming from the emotional nervous system states that are going on anywhere, right? So with all the will in the world, you could be like, I am love and light and all these things, but if you don't believe it in your subconscious, they're pulling in 2 different directions, which is why it is so important that these things that are stuck are starting to come up to the surface, because once seen, they can't be unseen, and once they're seen, they can start being processed. What's interesting about that is that this 3 of Swords here feels less about the emergence of the truth coming up to the surface. It actually feels to me like a relinquishing of the tension that keeps everything stuck. Because we've assumed, or I have assumed rather, that this 3 of Swords is coming up here. I feel like this is the expectation that once truth arrives, it's going to be painful, it's going to hurt, and we're just going to have to get the fuck over it, right? But we're talking about a consciousness shift. We're not just talking about you healing here. So what if that 3 of Swords, you sitting with the truth and the truth being really fucking uncomfortable, which is, I think, part of the Scorpio experience, right? What if that was actually, rather surprisingly, turning out to do the opposite? Or spooling up to do the opposite. And realizing how much effort and energy it takes to keep things squashed down versus just letting them out. And particularly where that creates space for you to start thinking and feeling differently. Not just about things, but just feeling different in yourself. Because this level of relaxation, I'm sure there are situations where you've managed to pull off being relaxed, right? But your subconscious has been primed for suffering because of the experiences that you've had, right? So every decision that you make, it's bouncing it off your nervous system. It's like, have we been through anything like this before? Yes, it ended very badly. Now everything's starting to spike, and you're like, well, okay, right, well, I need to cut this off. I need to move away from this. I need to do the other. This feels like the upgrade in your thinking or your belief system or your paradigm, right, is that sometimes the repression hurts more than the truth. And I know you would rather have the truth than that, and that's why, you've got this phenomenal capacity for suffering quietly in a way that nobody ever sees, right? But consider that maybe the pain is just in squashing all of this down. We can't process things as per the South Node. We can't balance them as per the South Node if they stay locked in a box under the bed in a room where the door is locked, and then we've shoved a huge piece of furniture in front of the door and just pretended that there is no door there, right? We've got to kind of get it up. And if you can name the fear, if you can name the thing that you don't want to experience, it actually reduces it in size. It's when we don't look at it that it becomes big. And there's something about all of that that has you thinking and feeling differently, not only about what you could do, because you believe that you can, but also how it would feel to do that. The Page of Wands is on his side here because we've not yet reached that point of full surrender. It's close. It really is close. But I think in order to really work with the Hanged Man here, you're going to have to trust that whatever comes up actually is something that you can handle. Because I think the deep subconscious fear that you've been dealing with your entire life is that if I have to look, like literally look head on to whatever these things are from my past, it's going to cause an internal collapse. And what I'm actually seeing here is something entirely different, Scorpio. Now, the Page of Wands will turn the right way up when the full surrender has occurred. Like, seeing things from a different perspective at the very least with the Hanged Man. But, refusing to resist any longer, particularly in the area of feeling, and to just allow those things out. The page then presents as the energy that is us getting ready to start taking a new journey, right? Certainly these two work beautifully together, and like these three, my God, this is outstanding, Scorpio. But we have to create space. So it's your emotions that are getting a levelling up, but that is causing it a mental levelling up too, because the information that you're working to, rather than scanning the horizon and looking for threads and matching them against what you have already experienced, it's actually creating a bit of space for you to truly experience something new on a new level without you putting the overlay of your pain and your trauma over the top of it, because it's all coming up to the surface and it's just allowing to be released. You see what I'm saying? Let's have a look and see what the next step for Scorpio is, please. What's the next step for Scorpio? Fucking hell. Moon reversed. Wow. Fucking hell, what is it with these cards? I swear to God. We've got another page, I think. Page of Swords reversed. That's fascinating. And then we've got two cards there, and we've got the Tower at the bottom of the deck, which I really like. And I mean, for me, although it doesn't strictly represent the energy of Uranus, like it really does, for me, represent the energy of Uranus, in terms of its effect at least, anyway. It's sudden, sharp, shocking breakthroughs, upheaval, sometimes it's crisis, but it's a reorientation. And is that not exactly what we've been talking about here for the whole of this reading? It's like you recalibrating your emotional state, which has the knock-on effect of recalibrating your thinking, and now we are capable of thinking ourselves into reorienting towards something that we're allowed to have. Yeah, 7 of Pentacles, 9 of Wands, beautiful, right? I actually really like this, Scorpio. I really like it a lot, because with the Moon card being there, it can represent the subconscious. And you've had both of the luminaries show up. We've had the Sun and we've had the Moon. The Sun represents that conscious mind. The Moon represents the unconscious mind, the things that we can't see. When it shows up in the reverse, it is a revelation of those things that we could not see. Certainly those things that are bubbling up from the subconscious suddenly realise that we're working to a script that says, I'm not allowed to be happy. I'm not allowed to be complacent. I'm not allowed to be to just vibe, because I may get ambushed by something in the future and I'm afraid that it will hurt or I won't be able to deal with it. And so I have to be permanently in this state of hyper awareness, because if I don't see it coming, I can't deal with it, or I am afraid that I can't deal with it. The Tower here feels like the monumental breakthrough on the level of realizing that actually you can deal with anything that comes up. Why? Because you're super fucking capable. You've got strength beyond measure. And when this emotional narrative is allowed to dissipate, you've got an incredible amount of space for you to decide what goes in there instead. So the moon in reverse, you know, the revelation of what is not seen, secrets revealed and all that kind of stuff, happening on the level of the subconscious. It's a trust mechanism here that you're asking to employ, rather than a scanning preparation, you know, looking to see what could come next. Employ the trust. You know, in the last 2 years, Scorpio, how many times have things happened? Oh, how to word this? That confirmed your awareness that this material life is not all that there is. Now, I think every Scorpio on the planet is inbuilt with that. You know, there may be plenty of them walking around who have, who choose consciously to subscribe to, I don't know, like a Cartesian version of a mechanical universe, right? But I think to be a Scorpio is to be awareness of to have awareness of other things. The difficulty is how we integrate that into for you, how you integrate it safely into your conscious mind. And I think that's where the schism's always been. But the interesting thing about this Page of Swords is it's saying you actually don't need to keep scanning the horizon for new information. You don't have to gather anything new. This is not about a new level of understanding that is achieved by way of access to new information that you didn't have before. It's like recognize that this is actually a spring cleaning of the internal space to make space for a narrative that isn't, I must be prepared, I must be on my guard, everybody's out to get me. Whatever variant of anything that it might be, even down to things like fear of judgment, you know, which is, I don't know, I feel like of the fixed signs that fear of judgment is probably more of a Leo and Taurus experience, but I do see it in all the fixed signs to some extent or another. If we could replace that with, I'm going to do a thing and I believe that I can. Just that. Like, I believe that I can. Why? Because I know that there is something else going on here, an underlying intelligence, God, source, creator, universe, like whatever your terminology is for it. There's something bigger than me, and I'm playing my part in this. And do I want this next year coming up to be the same as every single year that I've experienced up until this point? Because this kind of grand release that we see here is almost not that grand in its release, except that it is, and we know that it is because we've got these major arcana cards showing up here. But it's more about how you deal with this. It's not about the big universal energies happening at you, although there are some significant ones. It's like, can you change the way that you do things? Can you recognize that your emotions are actually fleeting and they can be released, and you don't lose any of your identity in the process? In fact, you create space for you to start packing all sorts of new things in there if you believe that you can. And maybe part of this process of not looking for new information, but recognizing we're just kind of releasing old narratives and that's it, and we don't have to shoehorn anything in just yet, is recognizing where the Seven of Pentacles shows us situations that were never designed to get the best out of us. Quite the reverse. Because Seven of Pentacles has always got that kind of like friction to it for me. because we recognize where we didn't fit in, or we never did fit in, or we did fit in for a while and now we don't fit in, right? It's like it feels like we're just not in the right place. The Nine of Wands says that we can actually be anywhere. Really? That's interesting. The only thing that we need is the right boundaries. Why do I get the sense that this isn't exactly material? Here's a curious thing, Scorpio. Right, you know what I said before about Scorpio seemingly inbuilt have this awareness of there being the other. Let's just call it the other with a capital O, without really, needing to get too specific about the terminology, because everybody speaks differently about these things, right? But certainly a sense that this mechanistic view of the universe is inaccurate, because we feel things and we know things, and there's these peculiar synchronicities and signs, and we move in one way and we get we get guided by the universe. For some of you, it is that side of you itself that has been repressed, which is really interesting. Because when I'm talking about the ability to be anywhere, which is a very curious thing indeed, to have just come in sideways at the end of the reading, I don't get the impression for all of you that that is, living in one neighbourhood versus another, or one state versus another, or one country versus another. I think we're talking about layers of reality. With the right protection and the right boundaries, you can actually move in between all of them, if you believe that you can. What the fuck? Right, for some of you it is a denial of your own higher knowing, which is really interesting. Tell me about these two cards here. What do we have here? I'll tell you, Scorpio, there's something really big going on here for you. Like this Judgment card here, in some decks the Judgment card is called Rebirth. Or it's called something like Ascension, right? Depends on the deck. But there is this idea that there's a very necessary step between emerging from the underworld, as one does when one has been on an underworld journey, at the point of the sun, right? The sun represents that point of re-emergence. And we've been through, death and the devil and temperance and the tower and all that sort of stuff, right? We get to the sun, we re-emerge. We are clean, we are new. But it's not the end of the journey, because the next step of the journey, the next card in the major arcana, is this ascension-like, judgment-like, total rebirth, like coming out of the dark and into the light. And we're still not at the end of the major arcana. Then we get to the world card, and that is fully, we have mastered this lesson and we're ready to move on to the next thing. I mean, it feels like the information that you're looking for is up, not down, Scorpio, and I don't know what that means. That's just the message. But the tower being at the bottom of the deck twice is significant. I mean, this is a big change here. It's oriented around your thinking, your belief systems, your belief structures, your survival mechanisms, like all of that changing. to give you the ability to reach up rather than down. What the fuck? Alright, I'm going over to the extended now because this is really, really interesting and I'm so curious. So I want to start like looking at all sorts of stuff. So, if you would like to join me over there, you're very welcome to do so. You can do that via the description, the what now? The links in the description box below. Like I said, there's one that will take you to Selfie, there's one that will take you to Circle, and there's 2 levels of entry to Circle. I've also put some recordings of classes that I've done, and there will be more in time. I just haven't got around to editing them and getting them up on Selfie. So if any of that sounds like it might be of interest to you, please do feel free to knock yourself out with that. Otherwise, I think I'm just going to leave it here and dig into this a little bit more. But, whether or not you're coming over to the extended Scorpio, I would like to say in the firmest of tones to you, lovingly, of course, that there are some really dramatic changes going on here. And I don't want to underplay how transformative these changes are for you, particularly since we are given to believe that June is largely a quiet month, right? Some nice energy in June. There's a couple of funky things in June as well. But I feel like rather than this being a dissipation of tension, which is how some people have seen June, it feels like it's a holding space, a liminal space. Because when we get to the end of June, and we'll be in Cancer season then, we will be in Cancer season then, the energy starts to get very strange again. And it's like there's a transformative experience here, and I know that word gets used a lot, and yeah, I can't think of anything better at this point. But I don't think this is crisis for you. I'm going to be really, really clear. I don't think that this is crisis, but I think that trust plays a huge role in the reorientation process. Something's definitely rupturing though. And the Tower is a universally positive card. It actually is. So whether or not we recognise that in the moment, later on down the line, it turns out to be positive. So, I'll leave it there. Know that I love you all very, very much, and I'll see you soon.